Oh, hello. Are you going insane? Like me? Well, you don't talk to me that way. You're just mouthwash. Okay, all right, okay. Don't. Okay, let's think about this. Well, there's one thing you can do. We can cook. Today I'm going to show you how to make a beef stew or a beef stock. This is a delicious recipe and it'll keep you from going utterly insane. Okay, so an important part of making a stock is making sure you add some nice flavorful beef bones to your stock. You can see we have ours here. These are going to give your stock a nice rich flavor. But you don't want to put them in just as is. You want to roast them in your oven first. The reason to do that is to let the meat get nice and brown, to draw out some of the rich flavor. It's also to break down a little bit of the gelatin or the collagen, the connective tissues in the meat. That's going to make your stock a lot richer. It's going to give it a nice viscousy, kind of sticky consistency, which is what you want. So you can preheat your oven to around 475, 500 degrees if it gets that hot. Preheat your oven. Dust your bones with a little bit of salt and pepper. Mostly just some salt is fine. Once your oven's preheated, then you're going to throw them right in there. You can elevate them like I have on a tray, or you can just put them on a baking sheet. Again, this is just to brown them up, to get some nice color on them, to break down the meat, so that way when you do put them in your stock for slow cooking, it'll be a much richer, deeper flavor. So I've done that. Just going to throw them right in this oven. Nice hot oven. We're going to keep them in there for maybe about 15 minutes or so, but keep an eye on them. You want to make sure you don't blast them all the way through. You're just looking to brown them, get a nice brown color on the outside. So the type of meat that we're going to use is beef shin, beef shank. This is a great type of cut to use when you're making beef stew because it's a very lean muscle, but it's got a lot of great connective tissue. It's got a lot of this collagen in here that's going to break down to give your stew, to give your stock a very rich and viscousy, a very sticky flavor and consistency. This is a wonderful muscle. It's basically the animal's shin, you can think of it as, and it supports all of the animal's weight. So it's got a lot of muscle, not a lot of fat, very lean. And this is really what you want. Fat, of course, is delicious, but when you're slow cooking, you want some of these cuts with a lot of this collagen and connective tissue, connective sinews inside, because over a long period of time, it's going to break down, and again, it's going to get very sticky and add a really nice consistency to your stew. So we've got a lot of that right here, a lot of these pieces, and what we're going to do is just salt and pepper them, just a little bit, because again, just like we did with the stock bones, we're going to sear this meat in a pan first to get it nice and caramelized, to get all these pieces nice and brown on the outside. Not cooking them all the way through, just browning them on the outside. That way we're releasing some of the flavor, and when they do go into our stock, they're going to be that much more rich and deep with flavor. So again, you want to cut these pieces that you have maybe into about 1.5 inch, 2-inch squares. Dust them with salt and pepper. Make sure you get it, be fairly generous with the salt. Kosher salt usually works best. Really, you know, some people use sea salt, but usually Morton's is a good kind of kosher salt. That's a great type of salt to use. It's flaky. We have some really nice finishing salt, which we'll use later, some Malden salt, but that's just for the end. Pepper, make sure you put some pepper on here too. And again, it's just to flavor the pieces. Then what we're going to do is sear them in a pan. We'll do that next. Now what we're going to do is sear our cubes of beef, our beef shank. So a little bit of olive oil in a pan, preferably a cast iron pan if you have one. If you don't, a regular clad iron pan is fine. This is what you want to use to sear your beef in. You want to turn the heat on, and you want to get your pan hot first. Whenever you're searing any type of meat to get a nice crust on the outside, to get it nice and brown, you don't want to put it in a cold pan. You want to make sure the pan is ripping hot first. That way, when you put the meat in, it's going to start to brown the outside. So we're going to get this pan pretty hot with some oil. should be hot enough. I turned it on a couple minutes ago. You can tell when a pan is getting really hot when you put some oil in it and it starts to smoke a little bit, as we can start to see now. So we've salted our beef. What we're going to do now is put the beef in face down. You want to kind of get a nice brown crust on all sides, so we're going to move them around a little bit. Just want to put them in right like this. Now we have a lot of beef here. This is going to be, provide several portions for this meal. So you don't want to crowd your beef. It'll take a few times. If you have a few pans, you can use a few. But in general, you don't want to put all the beef in. You want to sear it and get it nice and caramelized. So space it out a little bit. You might have to do a few different sears. Let's check on our bones that we put in the oven to roast and to caramelize a little bit. Safety first. I'm going to take them out. And as you can see, they're already starting to brown up a little bit. This is exactly what we wanted. You can see some of the marrow on the inside has already started to caramelize. That's what we want. We're going to put them back in there for maybe another 5 minutes or so. All right, as you can see, we're searing some of the beef to get a nice brown color. Want to flip them over. Just looking to get the outside nice and crispy, nice golden brown color. Again, we're not cooking them all the way through, just searing the outside. As you can see, these pieces are close to done. We'll take them out and we'll put some more in. And as you can see, now we have our beef shin nice and seared. Got some nice color on all sides. Just going to put that off to the side. We're going to cook the rest of the beef shank. So the vegetables we're going to use for this stew are fairly traditional. We're going to use some nice root vegetables like parsnips. We're also going to use carrots. And then we're going to use potatoes. These are just baking potatoes. And we're going to use onions. So you're going to want to peel your parsnips. You don't have to, but for aesthetic value, we'll peel them and then we're going to chop them. So once you've got that outside skin off, you can take off the end, which tends to be a little bit tough, but then the rest is all set to go. What you're going to want to do is give them a nice rough chop. You can see they taper down, so a little bit thicker on this end. So what you can do if you want is split them and then chop them like this. So you have pieces, depending on what size you want for your stew. That's usually a good size. That's what you want. Okay, so once again, we have parsnips, potatoes, onions, and carrots. And really, you're just rough chopping them. Remember, when you're chopping, be very conscious of your fingertips. Go very slowly. Slow and steady wins the race. And you're just chopping these vegetables into maybe an inch or so, inch cubes. That way that they'll break down. But when you're making a stew, I still like to have big chunks of things. So, you can leave them fairly big if you want. It's totally fine to keep them fairly big. Remember, they're going to be cooking for a long time, so they'll have plenty of time to cook through. Same thing with the carrots. I like to keep the carrots relatively big. Remember, carrots tend to get soft, so if they're bigger, I feel like they're a little bit nicer in a stew. If you mince them up very small, they're going to kind of disappear in your stew, which is fine too. Some people like making a stew that way, but I like to keep them fairly big, so you can keep them as big chunks, just like this, and that way you'll be able to see them in your stew. And generally, I think it makes for a much heartier stew. Same thing with the onions. You're just rough chopping them. You can chop them in quarters, just like that, and they'll fall apart once they're in the stew. So we've got parsnips, potatoes, onions, carrots, and of course we've got our nice beef cubes. Now again, many people don't eat beef. Many people don't eat any type of meat, and that's fine. You can make this stew with just vegetables, with just hearty vegetables like parsnips and with other delicious root vegetables. You don't have to use meat at all when you're making this recipe. You're going to follow all the same steps, but just take out the meat. And I almost forgot, one of my most favorite ingredients to work with is garlic. Garlic's fantastic. It's extremely healthy for you. It adds a wonderful flavor to many dishes. But when you're cooking a stew, garlic is particularly delicious, I think. So, you know, you buy garlic in the grocery store and these cloves. You're going to break them down into these smaller little cloves here. And basically you're just going to peel the outside. You can make a little incision. You can get your nail underneath there. And you're just going to peel off the husk on the outside. And we're going to put these in whole. We're not going to chop these up. A lot of dishes will call for minced garlic, but really in terms of making a stew, you can put them in whole, just like this. They'll be delicious. So we're going to put in maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 garlic cloves. And then also, one of my favorite herbs is dill. Dill and thyme. I don't have any thyme, so we're going to put in a little bit of dill. Dill comes in bunches, and you just want to pick off, you just want the leaves, the little thin pieces at the end. You don't need the stems, although when you're making a stock, you can put the stems in too, actually. So we're going to have some dill, some garlic, and that'll add an extra layer of flavor to our soup. One thing we're going to do before the liquid is, as you can see, I've just diced up some carrots, some garlic, and some onions. Traditionally, you could add a little bit of celery too, but I don't have any celery. So right now we're just going to add onions, garlic, and carrots that I've kind of rough chopped, and about 3 pads of butter. I'm just going to put those right in there, and the purpose of this is just to release a little bit of flavor from these vegetables. It's a good way to start off a stock. I'm just going to let that butter melt and these vegetables just cook a little bit till they're translucent. And then we're going to add our liquid, and then we're going to add the meat and the vegetables. I've put a little bit of beef stock in here. I'm actually going to pour just a little bit of chicken stock in. And again, you can also use water. If you need to add a little bit more liquid, just add some water. I've salted it. I've added a little bit of pepper as well. I've also added some of my favorite spices, allspice and cloves. Cloves is a nice warm spice, kind of similar to nutmeg or allspice. You can add just a little bit of ginger. I like ginger. You can also use fresh ginger if you have it. Some turmeric. Turmeric's very healthy for you. Just a little bit of turmeric for a little bit of color and flavor. Then we're going to add our big stock bones, these stock bones that we roasted earlier. We're going to put those right in there. Now keep in mind, your stock will fill up fast. You can see how many ingredients I have. I'm going to put the turnips in, the parsnips. I can't remember if these are parsnips or turnips. Either way, a nice root vegetable. We're going to put in our potatoes. We're going to put in our onions. Going to put in some carrots. And we're going to put our beef in. As you can see, this is almost brimful now. It's almost coming up to the top. We're going to have to add a little bit of liquid. I've made enough for a few stocks, so what we're going to do now is add a little bit of liquid just so this can cook. Okay, now, got it almost up to the top. This is almost a little bit too full, but it's on high heat right now. What we're going to do is let this come to a boil, and then we're going to immediately drop it down to a simmer. Simmer means you want to see just small little bubbles coming to the surface. Usually your flame is on a very low flame, small size flame. So we're going to let that come up to a boil, and then we're going to drop it down to a simmer. Now here's what a really low simmer looks like. I could probably turn it down even a little bit more. Basically, you just want a few bubbles coming to the surface, not boiling, just simmering. And then you're basically going to let your stew cook like this for at least 3 hours. I like to cook them for about 3 hours. You can go a little bit longer. You can also get away with a little bit less time if you got less time on your hands, 2 hours or so. But this is basically what you want your simmer to look like. This way everything is cooking nice and gently. One of the reasons that we cook is because it provides us with a little bit of space to unwind, a little bit of mental clarity. That's at least why I do it. This is something that you can do at home as well. With a few ingredients, you can turn those into a great dish and a great meal for your family and for your friends. With a little bit of time, anything is possible. And especially in this very difficult time in our lives right now, it can be a nice activity to do inside, other than cleaning up the mile of dishes that are behind me that I've strategically hid. You can cook for a little bit, do the dishes later. Do something for yourself, something that gives you a little bit of joy first, and then take care of your responsibilities afterwards. And so here we have our nice finished beef stew. And you can see the beef, once it's cooked for 3 or 4 hours or so, it really just falls apart, and that's really what you want to go for. You can see it's got this great stringy consistency to it, and all that interior sinew and connective tissue really gels and melts into the meat, and that's really what you want to go for. I hope everybody has a great week. Take care.